we've had a few games for each team now at this point. Training camp's been up for just under a week now. So which training camp storyline do you think is most fantasy relevant so far?
Yeah, I figured let's each overreact to something. Obviously, not everything you see in training camp is going to matter, but there will be some actionable items. And the one I have my eye on is John Klingberg getting that PP1 spot with the Toronto Maple Leafs. That was always going to be the thing in fantasy with John Klingberg. If he gets a shot to replace Morgan Riley, it's extremely important information for fantasy. And of course, yes, John Klingberg, his overall game has slipped a lot in the last couple of seasons, especially defensively. But even just if you look at the last 2 years, which would be considered his decline, 88 defensemen have played 100 minutes or more on the power play. He's 13th in primary assists per 60 minutes. So he can still move the puck. He's still a very good power play quarterback. He's more of a threat with his shot than Morgan Riley is, I would argue as well. So if you have him out there with Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares, that's exciting. The Leafs have been a top 2 power play in the NHL 2 years running. Yes, they've lost Spencer Carberry, the mastermind, but they still have the personnel that he helped sort of hone into a well-oiled power play machine. So I don't think they're suddenly going to be a bad power play. They're still going to be well above average. And this is an exciting situation for Klingberg. The other actionable item is this is a big hit to Morgan Riley's fantasy value. He's someone who struggled through a lot of last season, and he's no longer much of a threat these days as a goal scorer from the point. And if he's not out there in the power play, he's going to lose a lot of points. So John Klingberg is going to jump a ton in fantasy value if he keeps this job. Morgan Riley slides a lot.
I will say that, again, we're talking on one preseason game, but man, Klingberg looked bad against Ottawa on Monday night. He looked bad. That was like bringing memories of who were number 3 last year for me. Justin Hall.
I predicted that he's going to be the next Jake Gardiner or Justin Hall. It's not going to be pretty on defense.
When you look at Klingberg, he had a lot to prove last year. He was on that 1-year prove me deal, and he hurt his own value for sure. Let's see what he can do this year. For me, the training camp battle that I guess the training camp storyline that was most interesting to me, and this will not come as a shock at all, but it's who is going to play with Connor Bedard in Chicago, and it looks like Tyler Johnson is going to be the guy that they're going to be going with, and that one's really interesting. He had 32 points last year, but if you look at a full season, because he only played 56 games, we're looking at a guy who could hit 50 points last year. When it comes to the Blackhawks, they had a couple guys last year that looked probably much better than they would have been on other teams, just given the situation of that group. But Tyler Johnson, is not a spring chicken anymore. He's 33 years old. It feels like quite a while ago that we were talking about how good he was as a small player. He was kind of the model, 5'8" player that you really want a guy to turn into if they're that big or that small. But 72 points in 2014-15, and he's had 150-point season since then. So offense has been hard to come by, but we know he's got the skill. We know he can move his legs, and if he's healthy, he could still be a valuable offensive contributor. You throw him on a line of Taylor Hall and Connor Bedard, and that is maybe the best line he's ever played on in his career. So this is a good chance for him to be this good guy, good value guy that might not be too high in some pools because the fact he hasn't put up a ton of points. And yeah, again, he had 32 points last year. He had 7 the year before. He had 22 the year before that and 31 the year before that. And the issue is he hasn't hit the 70 game mark since 2018-19. So if he stays healthy, we know he could put up points. Staying healthy is the concern. But the fact that he's starting this preseason right now and starting training camp with Connor Bedard, I think has to get you pretty excited about what he could do.
Yeah, I think that's a bang-on assessment, and I did an update of my top 300 fantasy rankings last Friday, and I did move Tyler Johnson up. He was on the bubble, and now I moved him into roughly the top 275. So I think absolutely he's draftable now. I would still bid carefully just because of, like you said, Steven's health risk, and we just don't know how long stick on that line, but I think in a deep league, you want to draft him with a late pick, and maybe even in a medium league, he's an early season waiver ad as well.
Yep. So again, you tread carefully there, but if you're in a really deep league and you get the space, you could do a lot worse than guys playing with Connor Bedard. But